60 Minutes Rewind.
It's only a TV game show, but a local station manager smart enough or lucky enough to have glommed onto it is a hero. A station manager who turned it down is probably looking for a job. The public is bananas about it, so much so that in places it can virtually dictate which evening news broadcast most people watch. Its stars have become cult heroes whose success even they do not understand. The Wheel of Fortune, known in the understated language of broadcasting as a mega hit, and known and loved by 42 million Americans who are absolutely hooked on it. The game show of game shows, combining the hangman word game of childhood and the grown-up money game of roulette. To millions, to be a contestant on Wheel of Fortune is to have won second prize in the lottery of life. First prize went to the people behind the wheel. It is number one in its time period in 87% of the 198 stations it runs on. That success has a lot to do with contestant selection, and once selected, properly briefed.
You know, you can say either or either, Steen or Stein, semi-sweet, semi-sweet, prima ballerina, prima ballerina. You can say tomato. You can say tomato. That's right.
The contestants already know the rules of the game. They are merely being given a short course in the first rule of television: speed.
Buy those things quickly. If you know what you want, you're going to buy them quickly. Your eye will just go right to that list. You know, you'll be able to buy the things that you want. You'll go home happy, and maybe we'll get to fourth round.
Contestants are cued when to smile, where to look. Everything about the wheel is planned, except who wins and who loses. The game is scrupulously fair. The contestants, by the way, must decide what they'll choose if they win. No time for hesitation.
You got 1 week for two and a Mexican cruise. You must leave from LA, okay? That's where the cruise line leaves, so there's no airfare to LA. You must provide your own transportation to LA.
It's not all this care that accounts for the wheel's phenomenal success. That is due to, well, if I knew the answer to that one, I would run CBS. What is known is that ordinary people love it. But why? Some say it's the very ordinariness, a case of the bland leading the bland. The man who thought up the show and dreams up the phrases is no Mr. Excitement himself. It's Merv Griffin. Now, how does blandness become almost an addiction?
Well, I've stayed on 23 years on television with a large amount of blandness.
Is there something to that?
I don't think that's the secret, no. I think it's just kind of, it's a wonderful game that everybody can play. What is the intrigue with board games like Monopoly?
Part of the intrigue of the wheel is the host, Pat Sajak, and the lovely Vanna White.
Pat Sajak, there's a lot more to him than what you see running a game. I've allowed him to take over my show, and he's done extremely well. I mean, he's an interested young man.
In Vanna's case, she does this rather odd job of work. Yes?
But she turns those letters very well.
Is it an art or a science or what?
It's a great job. I don't know how to describe it. All I do is basically turn letters. And all this recognition and all this stuff, I don't understand what it is.
What are you thinking about when you do that, when you do it?
I'm totally involved with the show. Totally. I have to be, because I have to hear every letter that's being said, because I have to know where the letter is to turn it. And I do know the puzzle beforehand. So I'm concentrating the whole 30 minutes on the show.
Concentrating and smiling.
Oh, sure. Well, I'm happy.
The high point of the opening is the entrance of the almost silent Vanna White. In her way, she has become America's darling. The best letter turner in the business.
It must be in the wrist. This is how I do it. I turn those letters. It's all part of timing, I think, also. And also...
How do you mean? I'm sorry.
The timing as far as I'm standing there, the main thing I have to... The puzzle board is huge. It is huge, and I have to do a lot of walking. And I have to walk fast to get all those letters turned over so they can solve more puzzles.
Part of Vanna's appeal is the silence and the mystery. Garbo of primetime access. In the intimacy of the studio warm-up, she offers a taste of the private Vanna.
How do I stay in shape? I do a lot of exercising and a lot of eating, too. I just had 2 huge helpings of mashed potatoes.
What's blander than mashed potatoes? Pat Sajak. A former weatherman now paid to be a walking, talking loaf of Wonder Bread. You're not paid to be a wisecracker.
Blandness comes naturally to me. It's an amazing kind of talent. You're born with it. You can't develop it. Some people are born bland. Well, I'm not. You can't be really too much, or you're not going to wear well with the public.
Do you have to contain yourself in order to retain your inoffensiveness?
No, I'm a pretty inoffensive guy. Not really. First of all, I am by nature, I'm kind of a nice enough fellow, you know. I mean, I get asked whether I ever get upset with players or, you know, with someone who doesn't do something right on the show or anything. I just have great sympathy for these people. This is a horrible situation to be in. They're the Wheel of Fortune champions of their blocks, and suddenly they're on in front of 40 million people. If they make a mistake, it's going, you know, as I have said before, on the VCR, and it's going to be played at every birthday party for the rest of their lives.
But do you ever kind of sort of sit on your own shoulder and say, my God, look at this, this fuss is over a bunch of collection of garden gnomes or...
But in fairness, these are lovely gnomes. I don't know if you've seen them. They're brightly colored. They're very nice. They would look nice on your lawn. And we give away lawns, too. We actually give away fake grass on our show.
Well, we try and give people the very finest of everything. The finest jewelry, the finest perfume, the finest clothes, the finest furniture. Now,
Nancy Jones, the producer of The Wheel, is also its chief shopper.
But we try and make Wheel of Fortune like the dynasty of game shows with all the really beautiful, glamorous things that people would never buy for themselves, but they dream about.
Uh-huh. And what better place than Rodeo Drive to do the shopping?
Exactly.
Grand prizes for the winners, but what about the losers?
They can get a case of rice-a-roni. You could get a vacuum cleaner. You might get an assortment of screwdrivers, cough drops, tidy bowl cleaner.
Some other winners and losers at a meeting of TV station executives in Dallas. The winners carry the wheel, the losers do not. It may cost the station in a big market $1.5 million a year to run the show, but the income will be perhaps $5 million a year. With stakes like that, men and women talk about the wheel in the language of the defense industry.
They kill everybody. They do real well. It is an extraordinary steamroller that flattens everything, including us a little bit.
What do you do to them? Slaughter them, which is terrific, and we're going to keep doing it.
What does Wheel of Fortune do for Macon, Georgia?
It whips them like they'd stole something. I mean...
The biggest winners are Roger and Michael King, two small-time syndicators whose office was a telephone over a New Jersey barbershop, until they had the bright idea of buying the rights from Griffin to distribute the wheel for early evening viewing. They then peddled the show station to station, CBS, NBC, ABC affiliates, and the independents as well. 3 years later, $100 million a year in revenues. They now have friends they've never even met.
And I was in the men's room, and the fellow next to me said, boy, these King brothers are something. And I said, I don't know. I heard that they were lucky. And the guy got angry with me. He said, they're dear friends of mine, and they deserve every nickel they get. I said, nah, I don't think so. And he's almost ready to fight me. And I said, well, maybe you're right.
What toys do people who suddenly, in 2 years, owners of a mega hit, what toys do they buy for themselves?
My first toy was a home. I didn't have one.
Mine, too. I lived in an apartment for the last 15 years, so I went out and bought a nice house. And I also own some racehorses, partnership with some friends of mine, and it's really exciting. It's another game. I like games.
From New Jersey anonymity to Hollywood Park, and mixing it with such American royalty as Cary Grant. This day, they made the dreadful mistake of betting on their own horses.
Come on, Colleen! Nope, not gonna do it.
Not a total loss, however. As consolation, they won the pick six. A partner in the bet was Alan Landsberg, one of the King Kongs of television production. $35,000 was the prize. They don't pay off in rice-a-roni at Hollywood Park.
The story will continue after this.
Good evening.
The success of the wheel is so pervasive, it affects the nation's news-watching habits. If the wheel follows a particular network's news, that broadcast usually wins the ratings in that market. If the wheel is against a network's news, the news is devastated.
Well, basically, it's running in our particular market against our network news, World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, and it's difficult. It's hard to compete against it.
It annihilates all the network newses.
It's killing our programming, which we have our network news up against.
Which network?
It's NBC.
NBC. It's killing NBC network
Poor
news.
Tom Brokaw, yeah.
So the environment is very important to your news. And if you had a very fine house, a $100,000 house, and you put it in a bad neighborhood, it'd be worth 50. If you put it in a good neighborhood, it's worth 150. And the same thing goes for Wheel of Fortune. It's very compatible with news.
So the networks can love you and hate you at the same time, right?
In New York, CBS loves me, and in Detroit, NBC loves me, yes.
And in Cleveland, CBS hates you.
Yes, well,
And in Chicago, they don't hate us. They just don't have it. We offered the show to everybody. You have to understand, 3 years ago when we were starting to sell Wheel of Fortune, we banged on every door there was. Nobody would listen.
Does it ever trouble you that the price of your great success has been a drop and loss of audience of the evening news?
You know, I've called Rather time and time again. I said, Dan, get a wheel on the show. You know, you spin it the Mideast. You know, there's something to talk about. It would be... No.
The Kings are spending a fortune to keep the wheel spinning in America's consciousness, mainly on so-called promos, those 30-second spots that appear on local stations to hype the show. Promotion may be their most important product. There is a temptation when thinking about the success of the wheel to go looking for sociological reasons for the wheels within wheels. Essential American greed, the mindlessness of commercial television. Well, the reason may be no deep reason. Americans like to look at other Americans having fun in a way that doesn't hurt anyone.